Hey, good day, and welcome to another episode of V2V Ministries. Um, I got a word today that's not really used a whole lot within the church. It is used in like seminary and amongst pastoral clergy. And you'll hear it in some of the YouTube videos that are online as people evaluate kind of how people bring out the scripture. And so it's actually three words that I want to look at today. And the first one is the word hermeneutics. Hermeneutics. Um, and basically, hermeneutics is the branch of knowledge that deals with the interpretation, especially with the scripture. So it's going to deal with how you interpret the scripture and those sorts of things. Um, and so that's that branch of knowledge, hermeneutics. Um, now, one word that you'll hear probably more often than hermeneutics is how someone uses or how someone exegetes the scripture, or the word exegesis. And that's a critical explanation or interpretation of the text, especially of scripture. Um, it's a very critical interpretation. It's a very um, literal interpretation. Um, it is a way that you um, expose what the scripture is saying, um, and its intended meaning according to the text and how it's written. So that is exegesis. And when someone is doing that, you'll refer to them as, it's how they exegete the scripture, um, or interpret the scripture. Now, the third word that I want to look at today is eisegesis, or or yeah, eisegesis or eisegete. Um, so eisegesis is the interpretation, especially of scripture, that expresses the interpreter's own ideas or bias, uh, rather than the actual meaning of the text. Now, the reason you will see this a lot on other YouTube videos and those sorts of things is because a lot of people, a lot of the woke pastors, and the woke um, theology that's out there, uses um, eisegesis when they interpret the scripture. There's a lot of their own ideas, there's a lot of their own bias, um, and there's a lot of taking the scripture and making it form to what they want it to mean, rather than properly exegeting the scripture as it is written. So, those are three large words that you'll hear within the church community sometimes. Especially on YouTube, you'll hear exegesis and eisegesis. Um, but those both fall under hermeneutics and how we deal with the interpretation of scripture. So those are your three terms. Hermeneutics is the interpretation of scripture. It deals with the interpretation. Exegesis is a critical interpretation of the scripture as it is written, and eisegesis is a expression of the interpreter's own bias and opinion, uh, as they interpret the scripture. Uh, I know it's a fairly short video this week, but hopefully it works for you and it helps explain some things. We will have some larger words coming in the future that you don't hear as often, but I think are important to understand when you start digging deeper into the word, um, and you start talking about what people believe in doctrine and those sorts of things. Uh, so until next week, we will see you and have a good one.